Hello, my name is Ndamiso and welcome to 21 Attempts. Today I'm going to provide an extensive list of things that may trigger binge eating. I use the word binge eating, but of course this list also applies to things like overeating or unhealthy eating. This video was inspired by a video I did last year called How I Used to Eat for the Wrong Reasons, and when I put the same question to my Instagram friends, they helped me compile an even more extensive list, which I'm going to share with you today. Why is it important to know your triggers, you ask? Well, I think it's important because it gives you a sense of awareness, and awareness gives you power. If you're aware of the events or things that trigger you to overeat, then you can start to think about the more constructive responses to triggers, or also maybe develop more helpful and constructive responses to your triggers. So for example, if you know that being extremely hungry triggers you to overeat, then you could keep a healthy snack in your purse to ensure that when you do feel hungry, you could maybe nibble on something healthy so that you can avoid being extremely hungry, which would then lead you to binge eating. I provide this list because I think it is important that when we talk about our triggers, we use very specific language. While words like stress eating and comfort eating are helpful, unfortunately, I think they are too vague, and so they don't help us develop very helpful responses. I think it's important to know exactly what event and exactly what time of the day or exactly what incident might cause you to basically turn to food when maybe that may not be the best response. I also think that knowing the exact trigger gives you a sense of clarity, and that clarity gives you awareness, which then, as I've already said, gives you a sense of power because then you're aware of your options. If you don't know what your triggers are, then you're kind of stuck in a loop and you're being triggered, but you're not even aware that you're being triggered. So you keep doing, you keep basically just doing the things that don't work over and over again. Okay? In today's video, I've divided the triggers into 3 categories: daily triggers, triggering events, as well as broader factors. I will do my best to only just list the triggers today because it's a fairly long list and I don't want this video to be extremely long. Maybe in future videos I can discuss these in a bit more detail and how I've basically developed tools or mechanisms to respond to them. First up, daily triggers. Daily triggers stem from things we experience every day. They are easy to identify, but then also the most difficult to deal with, I find, because they are so baked into our daily routines. Also because they are habit inducing, but I think because they are based on things that happen every day, they provide us with a very beautiful and unique experience to develop self-discipline, because they mean that every single day we're gonna have to conquer ourselves. That's how I choose to see it anyway. So this is the list of daily triggers that I developed because the list that I came up with based on my own personal experience, but also that some of my friends on Instagram have also provided so that we can all be more aware of the events that trigger us. The daily triggers include things like, and I use my phone because I don't want to forget anything: work stress, that's a big one; relationship stress, poor sleep patterns, dehydration, PMSing. Cannot even begin to talk about the number of times I've overeaten or turned to food when I was PMSing. But I'm sure there's a lot of you who know how to cope with that. So please leave us a comment in the comment box, in the comment section below, so that we can all benefit from your knowledge. Social engagements, very big. Going on diets, this is on the list because it came up as one of the triggers that somebody mentioned on Instagram. It's one of my friends on Instagram, and I agree. For many of us, going on diets can be a trigger event because people tend to binge eat after they've been on a diet. I used to do that as well, but of course we know that I talk a lot about how I've been on a diet and I've really, really experienced life-changing results from it. So I think that diets are triggering, but I think that there's a way to work around that. I can do videos about that as well. Cheat days, also a very big one that comes up quite frequently. Hi you guys, I am terribly sorry I had to come in with a voice note here because I somehow lost the rest of that clip on
daily triggers. But the other triggers that I have on my list here include things like self-judgment. I think a lot of women struggle with this because we are raised to have such difficult relationships with food. Rewarding yourself for overcoming difficult tasks. And this is a big one for me because I honestly used to use food as a reward in the past. Whenever I finished a difficult task, I would give myself some kind of reward. I'm not too sure if that's a really good way of using food, but anyway. There's also celebrating success using food. Don't necessarily think it's bad, but I do know that it can get out of hand if it's not under control. Then, of course, I've got things like boredom. I think a lot of us do use food as entertainment. There's doing a job that you hate. It's a big one for a lot of people. If you're doing a job you hate, you might be turning to food quite often to basically comfort yourself, and that might not necessarily have very good results for you in the long run. Then there's extreme hunger. I've already touched on this. There's also cold weather. I know I struggle to eat healthy when it's cold. And then I don't have children myself, but a lot of my friends who have kids say that having children makes it very difficult for them to stick to a healthy diet. So maybe if all the moms out there could maybe confirm this for us if it's true. I also have noted here there might be also specific times of the day, week, or month where you find yourself specifically vulnerable to overeating and binge eating. So it's very important to be aware of those times and days or weeks of the month where you might be vulnerable to overeating. And then finally, I've got all myself shooting for vegan attempts. It's a very big one for me. Whenever I'm shooting for vegan attempts, I tend to overeat. So that's all for daily triggers. I'm now going to move back to the video.
Next, let's talk about triggering events. These are things that happen once in a while that put us in a state of stress. I find them a little bit more difficult to deal with because they don't happen every day, but the problem is when they do happen, they have the power to completely undermine progress that we might have previously made. And so it's important that we watch out for them. Triggering events include things like changing jobs, changing houses, especially if you're moving to a different town or a different country. This is a big one. The festive season. Okay, I know a lot of people can relate. How many of you have worked really hard during the year and managed to actually make some progress during the year, and then got to December and basically just threw all your progress out of the window? You know, it happened to me last December. I literally last year, I think I lost like 6 kilograms during the year, and then I gained 7 in December because I was just literally just stuffing my face throughout the festive season. Another trigger event is or moments of instability in our lives. So for example, going through a breakup or losing your job or losing your house. These are things that can be very upsetting and stressful, and sometimes it can cause us to turn to food for comfort. But the question is, should we be turning to food in those moments for comfort? I don't think that, of course, you know, there's any one way of dealing with grief and pain and suffering or stress. What I do know is that it can be important in times of stress to also really take care of yourself. Whatever your ideology is, I think it's worth thinking about the fact that when you're going through a difficult time, although it can be very comforting to eat unhealthy food, it might not necessarily be the thing that really helps you through your grief or your process of stressing. The reason for that is that, you know, I find that when you're eating unhealthy, it does add a bit of a layer of stress to your life. So the challenging thing is when you're already going through a difficult time, when you're eating unhealthy as well, then it means that you're dealing with the stressful events that's happening in your life, but also dealing with the additional strain of eating food that is not good for your body. I'll give you an example. When I moved to Stellenbosch, it was a particularly difficult period of my life, and I moved here, had to adapt to a new job, and it was a very stressful time, and I turned to food quite a lot. Now the challenge is that in addition to basically moving towns, moving homes, and adapting to a new work environment, I was also basically suffering physically because of the stomach cramps and the acne. So I think that as difficult as it is to eat healthy during stressful time, it's worth thinking about just not eating food that's not good for our bodies so that we can actually support ourselves physically through the stressful experience. The final category of triggers I call the broader factors. And the reason is I just really couldn't come up with a name, but they really have to do with things that are not necessarily immediately evident to us because we don't see them every day. We don't really consciously interact or engage with them every day, but they still affect our relationships with food and could also be triggers. So I'm going to list them, and hopefully in the future I can provide a better explanation of what I mean by these broader factors. The broader factors I think are important to educate yourself on, because if you don't know about them, they could really trip you up. The broader factors I've listed include hormones, a very big one, okay, for most of us. I, for example, have insulin resistance, and I didn't know this. And basically, the insulin resistance was causing all kinds of hormonal imbalances and causing me to have all kinds of cravings. So it's very important to educate yourself about how your hormones affect how you eat, when you eat, and why you eat the foods you do, and why you crave the foods you do at certain points. The biochemistry of eating. So what happens when you put the food in your mouth? What is the biochemistry that happens in your body that may or may not cause you to be more inclined to eat certain foods or crave certain foods or enjoy certain foods more than others? Your genes. I have here as well, nutritional deficiencies. So you might be suffering from a nutritional deficiency without realizing it, and your nutritional deficiency might be causing certain cravings. Capitalism. Big one. I think that's something that I became increasingly aware of when I started my health journey in 2015. I started to be more aware of how there are thousands of food companies out there that are profiteering from our unhealthy behavior, and so or from the realities of being human. The fact that certain foods will trigger excitement in your brain, and that certain foods with a certain consistency and a certain combination of ingredients will be very exciting to you and almost make you addicted to the food. So just be mindful that there are companies who pour thousands and thousands of dollars into figuring out how the biochemistry of eating works, what foods are going to be more addictive to you so that you can keep buying them, and that there's also pharmaceutical companies that also profiteer from the fact that we're largely an unhealthy society. So keep that in mind. A final factor that I've listed here are cultural norms. Big one. I think culture is very tricky because cultures are not self-reflecting, and they are also they're very much sort of baked into how we do things. It's the way things are done around here, and so they can shape the way that we eat and the way we relate to one another when it comes to food. They can shape how we interact around food. So I think that it's important to be aware of how the culture and cultural norms in your specific culture have shaped the way that you eat, and to be able to respond accordingly. I know that there's a lot of talk at the moment about diet culture. I'm still trying to understand what diet culture is, because I look it up and I read all these articles and they just seem overbroad. I can never really pinpoint exactly what this thing is referring to, but I do understand that it's trying to raise awareness and speak up against the culture of going on diets. Personally, I'm in favor of diets. I don't really think that if you want to lose weight, it's possible to do so, if you in a way that doesn't really require you to make any sort of changes to your diet. So personally, I'm for diets, but I'm very happy that people are considering what the culture of dieting is doing to our young people, our society. But I think it goes beyond diet culture. It even goes into your specific culture. Like, I'm Zulu and I'm Black, and I've had to really think about what being Zulu means for my relationship with food, and how certain ways of eating are reinforced by my culture, and whether those ways of eating are actually good for me. And I've also had to learn to basically go against the grain and question or change certain aspects of my culture around food. So be mindful of your culture. Okay, so that's all I have for today. If you have any other triggers that you want to put or add to the list, please leave them in the comment section below, or DM me on Instagram. I'm always very interested to hear what you have to say. Like I said, I think it's very important to know what events, what situations or things trigger particular patterns of eating, so that we can develop a sense of awareness, and then we can actually work on broadening our perspectives for how we could respond to those triggers. Thank you so much to all my friends on Instagram who helped me compile this list. I hope that it was useful to you, and in the near future I will do more videos about these various components or triggers and how I've basically figured out how to work around them to the extent that I have, because of course I haven't figured everything out as well. I'm still really learning. So thank you so much. Please follow me on Instagram at vegan_attempts as well as 21_attempts, and I will see you next time. Stay breezy. Conversa ribeira, nas águas de março eu fui a canseira.